Vegetarian diets have been shown to lower the risk of certain chronic diseases, but the risk of mental health is uncertain. So in this presentation, we'll be assessing if vegetarians are at a higher or lower risk for depression. So for some of the objectives of this presentation, we will review definitions of vegetarian diet, depression, and their prevalence. Then we will critically assess literature to evaluate if vegetarians are at a lower or higher risk of depression. Some important terms to understand is vegetarianism. This is typically a diet where there's no meat, poultry, or seafood that is consumed. This way of eating isn't as common. About 8% of the world considers themselves vegetarian. But as for the main topic we'll focus on is depression, and this is a mental health problem that is associated with sadness and loss of interest. And the prevalence of that is, as of last year, over 264 million people suffered from depression. Okay, now we'll begin to look at the studies. And in this study, they examined the association between mood state and polyunsaturated fatty acid intake of vegetarians and omnivore diets of men and women in the Southwest. And they had 138 participants complete a quantitative food questionnaire, and then a depression, anxiety, stress scale, and a profile of mood states questionnaire. And the depression, anxiety, stress scale measures depression, anxiety, and stress, and the higher the score indicates a greater degree of mood disturbance. And the profile of mood questionnaire estimates intensity of the mood disturbances, and the higher the score, the greater degree of mood. Okay, now on this slide, this shows the findings, and they found that the mean total DAS score at vegetarian participants was significantly lower. As you can see in the chart, vegetarian score was 8.32, while omnivores was 17.52. This is indicating a better mood in vegetarian participants. Mean total PMS scores of vegetarian participants was also significantly lower than the omnivores. DAS and PMS data complement each other and clearly shows that the vegetarian diets are not likely associated with poor mood states or depression as compared to the omnivore diets. This can also conclude that despite vegetarians having a lower EPA and DHA and overall long-chain omega-3 fats, it won't negatively impact their depression. Unlike the previous study, this next study will investigate the association between vegetarian diets and mental disorders, and they will do that through an interview, and it will be assessed at the prevalence of 1 month, 12 month, and lifetime. Unlike the previous study, this study found that the vegetarians have a higher risk of depression. In this table, it shows the 1 month, 12 month, and lifetime prevalence rates of mental disorders in the completely vegetarian all the way down to the non-vegetarian. And the 12-month and lifetime prevalence rates of depression disorders were elevated in the completely vegetarian group by nearly 15% compared to non-vegetarians. They also had an elevated prevalence for anxiety. Okay, in this last study that we're going to review, it will focus mainly on women, and the women were selected randomly from national health insurance databases and were between the ages of 22 to 27. Looking at the findings from the study, it shows that the semi-vegetarians and vegetarian women reported more depressive symptoms and were more likely to take prescriptions for depression. And if you look at the section of the people who have ever been diagnosed with depression, about 42% of the vegetarians have been diagnosed, while only 25 reported they have been diagnosed. And then if you look at the quote to the right from the article, it says semi-vegetarians and vegetarians had poorer mental health, with 21 to 22% reporting depression compared with the 15% of non-vegetarians. So after looking at the 3 different studies, they kind of contradict each other on whether vegetarians' risk for depression is higher or lower. Therefore, we can't really conclude if those who follow this diet have a higher or lower risk. And most of the studies were limited in the assessment of mental health due to them being self-reporting. And another conclusion that can be made is the differences between the studies could be due to the special population. Like the one study said a vegetarian diet imposes a lower risk of depression, only focused on the Seventh-day members, while the other 2 studies participants were more drawn from more general population.